There are 9 picoballs hidden in the persistent universe, and to my knowledge, nobody has found a single one yet.
Oh, yes, yes, yes! Woo! Boys! A successful space video game needs one very, very important thing: exploration. Locations to find, items to grab, mysteries to solve. Star Citizen has had quite a lot of these discoveries itself, each of which deserve their own video. There's Benny Henge, there's finding Heart of the Woods on Microtech, the Javelin Wreck, but no mystery has enraged Star Citizen players more than looking for a volleyball decorated like a penguin. Before we start talking about picoballs, we have to talk about what a pico is. Pico the Penguin is a plush doll you can buy from New Babbage, take on your ship, and go on wacky adventures with. It's very similar to Finley the Stormwell that you can find over at Orison. After its introduction in 3.10, it quickly became a mascot of both New Babbage and the Star Citizen community. I mean, just look at this adorable idiot. So famous had it become that Jared Huckabee, who you might know from Inside Star Citizen and Star Citizen Live, made his own little volleyball pico. During an episode of Star Citizen Live, he showed it off and actually made a proper version of the ball.
This is the picoball that was created by yours truly.
Now, for the most part, this was just a quirky way to talk to the devs and show all of the backers just how these dev tools work. And at the end of the episode, there was kind of a promise that we would see the picoballs be introduced into the verse.
The folks who have been asking where Pico will go in the verse, we don't know yet.
For the most part, though, we didn't really hear much else about it after that.
The UGFs did get a new edition in 3.13, though. Nobody's discovered him yet. And he's actually in the verse. You're hearing it here first. There are 9 picoballs hidden in the persistent universe.
After a sneaky tease and an outright announcement about the picoballs, the hunt was on. Exploration mode. Who knows what this grand prize was going to be for the first person to find all 9 picoballs hidden in the verse. So, people got to work. People scoured the game files. They went to all new locations. They went through every single social media post that they could find. Anything that would give a clue as to location of any of the picoballs. But hundreds of players and thousands of hours later, there was nothing. No picoballs had been found, let alone 9. There wasn't even a clue to be seen. People had started to come up with some theories as to why they weren't finding any picoballs at all. Maybe they weren't in underground facilities. Maybe they were elsewhere. Maybe they were just scattered amongst all of the planets and moons. There was one theory that seemed to have some weight. Star Citizen can be a very, very performance-intensive game, and a lot of that comes from the servers. So, to save on resources, the SC servers are constantly culling data. This means if it isn't a static object or it's not tied to a mission, too bad. Off it goes. As more hunters started to come upon this realization, the dream started to feel a bit dead. Everything else that CRG had told us to look for, mysteries in the verse, we had found, but the picoballs just didn't pop up. We were at a point where once every couple of weeks, someone would post on Reddit, Spectrum, Twitter, asking, hey, has anyone found the picoballs? And mostly falling on deaf ears of, nah, you can't. But something big was about to happen. As we approached patch 3.16, loot was becoming something that was more and more abundant in the verse. We had the loot boxes from 3.15, 3.17 was about to introduce selling to vendors. And with the loot boxes, people were even theorizing maybe picoballs can be extremely rarely found in the loot boxes. But still nothing at all. No picoballs. Everyone's abandoned the hunt. The case had gone cold.
This, guys, gee, has anybody... Croman. It's a picoball. It's a picoball.
Someone found one. Right there, sitting in Calhoun Pass Emergency Shelter on Microtech, a location that people had spent hours looking at before. What did Neil do differently? How did he find the picoball? Was he incredibly lucky? Was CRG spawning it for him so that he could show it to the world? The amount of energy this reinvigorated the race with was huge. We've found one of the 9. So, let's replicate it. Let's try to find the exact same one that he found. But nothing. Despite after over a year, the first picoball being found, we couldn't replicate it. Day after day, people would travel to Calhoun Pass Emergency Shelter and just find nothing. Further investigation on what happened to cause Neil to spawn the picoball revealed that the location had spawned in really, really slowly. And while we couldn't replicate, this information was huge. It meant that the streaming in issues that we were talking about, the server culling items, was almost 100% correct. That is exactly why we can't see the picoballs. But if we can manipulate the servers, or if we can get there right as the server spawns, we could find a picoball. Finally, as 317 was approaching, we got an inside Star Citizen talking about how the new mechanic of selling items is going to work. And in it, they mentioned this.
Very difficult to find in the boxes throughout the world. And of course, the picoballs will be the most valuable item in all of the persistent universe.
This clip was huge. It provided two things. One, the possible location of another picoball. And two, we would be able to sell these for profit. That means a lot more than you might think. That means that the devs know that picoballs can be found. They're in the game, but how do we find them? So as 317 approached PTU, in came the thread. Star Citizen Brandon BRB posted about how he had also been trying to get these picoballs to spawn. He had seen Neil's post, and after trying several times over many different PTU patches, it worked. There they are right there, the picoballs at Calhoun Pass Emergency Shelter, multiple times over multiple PTU patches. The one thing in common with all of them was, yes, the location was streaming in very slowly, but every time it did, he was able to find a picoball. Another member, Sladug, also was able to replicate it in the PTU, but it seemed as the PTU patches were going on, they were finding them less and less often. After reading through the thread, I thought it was time for me to give it a go. So I organized a 24-hour stream, I got as many of my friends as I could together, and we went hunting for not just the Calhoun Pass Emergency Shelter picoball, but all of them. And it's right there. I doubt it. Cry. Just spawn.
3 hours later.
On. Ah! Oh! Oh! Yes! 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 Woo! We did it. The Calhoun Pass Emergency Shelter picoball was now in our hands, in our inventory, ready for 317 to go sell it. Unfortunately, after about 21 hours, it was the only one we could find. We found a picoball. Was it one picoball? It was, but we found it. I want to thank each and every one of you for keeping me entertained while I looked for the picoballs. We analyzed the footage from the ISC of the other possible picoball location, and we looked at every single possible place that set of shelves spawns, but nothing. Even days later, we had people still going back to Calhoun Pass Emergency Shelter to see if they could still find it, but they couldn't. We had found one on live, but only one. Days later, the Spectrum thread continued. So Doug and Brandon had started to have real issues trying to find the picoball. They just couldn't. It wasn't spawning. And since then, attempts in 317 Live have yielded no success as far as we're aware. But with the release of 317, we would at least be able to see how much the picoball was worth. Well, that's a disappointment. Now, we did tweet at Jared Huckabee that the price was incredibly low for this item that's supposed to be the most expensive item in the verse. But he would respond to us with, hey, this is probably a bug. You should submit that. So we still have our picoball on us, and we're still waiting to see how much we can sell it for. One picoball found twice out of a possible 9. So many people who have joined and have left the hunt for the picoball since. Despite this, nothing has made me love Star Citizen more. The community getting together to participate in something like this, it's awe-inspiring. I would love to see the serve continue and more communities hop on. So talk to your org, talk to your friends, organize your own picoball hunt. Yes, it's probably going to be tedious, but if you find a picoball, that's a pretty big deal. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to give it a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be notified when I next upload. Hopefully, my next upload will be the second picoball.